Brunswick, Georgia is located between Savannah, Georgia and Jacksonville, Florida, very close to the Florida-Georgia border. The town's been here since 1738. They used to build Liberty ships here during World War II. The shipyards where they built them is now long gone, but the occasional cargo ship will show up and unload at the port of Brunswick. There's now roughly 100,000 people in the Brunswick metropolitan area. Slow Bells and I have been staying at the Brunswick Landing Marina, not too far from the historic downtown area. We arrived here just a few days before Christmas, and I think we'll get out of here sometime in early March. The temperatures have ranged between about 30 degrees and 80 degrees. I prefer the cooler days, but the mosquitoes seem to prefer the warmer days. It's a real nice marina here. The good things about it are the clean bathrooms, the free laundry machines, and the fact that all of these slip holders have access to the yacht club lounge, library, and internet computers. It's also a no-wake area. About the only bad side to the marina is the fact that there is a pulp mill not too far away, so when the wind is out of just the right direction, you can smell the pulp mill, but that doesn't seem to happen very often. I don't have a car with me this winter, but I've been able to walk just about everywhere I need to go in Brunswick. If you're not into walking, the marina has free bicycles that you can check out, and also Brunswick has the usual Uber and Lyft services. Within a half a mile of my marina slip, I can get to the historic downtown area. This has got a Wells Fargo bank, a post office, and several restaurants. Also within about a half a mile is Central Hardware, which is a really fun, old-fashioned hardware store that has just about everything that you could possibly want in the way of hardware. If you want to go a little further, about a mile and a half from the marina is a Winn-Dixie grocery store and a West Marine store, both located in the same little strip mall. There's really not a good grocery store any closer than that, although there are a couple little quickie stores. Roughly 4.5 miles from my marina slip, you'll find places like the Lowe's home improvement store, pretty good sized Publix grocery store, and a Walmart.
Well, now that you've had the 25-cent tour of Brunswick, let me tell you what the game plan is for the months ahead. Sometime in early March, which is coming up really, really fast, I'm going to attempt to do the Great Loop trip. And if you don't know anything about the Great Loop, that's okay, because I probably know only slightly more than you do. So I will finish La Bread, and you can listen to this nice man tell you all about the Great Loop. But remember, the nice man really doesn't know what he's talking about.
The Great Loop is a roughly 6,000-mile trip where you go up the U.S. East Coast and then kind of northwest from New York City through the Hudson River and the Erie Canal till you get dumped out into the Great Lakes. Once you get to the Great Lakes, you can get over to Chicago, and then using the Illinois River, you can get down to the Mississippi River. The Mississippi will take you to the Gulf Coast, and from there you can get back to where you started. There's a number of different variations you can do on this overall Great Loop theme. For example, instead of taking the Mississippi River all the way down to New Orleans, you can take the Tennessee River and the Tom Bigby Waterway and end up down in Mobile, Alabama. Another option is, instead of making a left turn when you get down to the Gulf of Mexico and heading to Florida, how about making a right turn and heading to Houston? Another option is that once you get to Florida, you can either cut across Florida through Lake Okeechobee, or you can take the long scenic route down to Key West around the tip of the Florida Keys. And oh, by the way, as long as we're in Florida, have you ever noticed how close Florida is to the Bahamas? There are several options up in the northern part of the trip that you have to choose from. For example, instead of going down through all of the Great Lakes on your way to Chicago, you can cut through Ontario on a canal in Canada called the Trent Severn Waterway. Another option is that once you get to Lake Ontario, instead of heading west towards Chicago, you can head east towards Montreal. And as it turns out, you can get back to Albany, New York by cutting through some additional canals and Lake Champlain. Another option is once you get up into the Albany, New York area on the Hudson River, instead of making a left turn and heading west towards Lake Ontario, you can keep on going north through Lake Champlain, and you're eventually going to get dumped into the St. Lawrence River. From there, you can go downstream past Quebec into the St. Lawrence Seaway and out around New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Or if you're feeling really adventurous, you can go around Newfoundland. If you head south from there, you can get back to New England and eventually back to New York City. There's a pretty big variety of the type of boats that do the Great Loop. Boats based loosely on a trawler design, similar to slow bells, are pretty common. There are also faster-moving cabin cruisers, and it's not uncommon to see small yachts that look kind of like small tugboats on the loop. However, the Great Loop has also been done on a pontoon boat, and it's been done on a jet ski. So take your choice. Sailboats also do the Great Loop, although for a portion of the trip, they'll have to put their mast down on the deck. The amount of time that people spend doing the loop varies quite a bit. 1 year is pretty common, although a fast boat can do it in less time, and it's also not at all uncommon for boats to take a much more leisurely pace and complete the loop over a multi-year period. In my case, I'll be starting from Brunswick, Georgia, going up the East Coast through the Chesapeake Bay and the Delaware Bay till I get to New York City, then up the Hudson River and Erie Canal, across Lake Ontario, through the Trent Severn Canal system in Canada, then the Great Lakes to Chicago, down the Illinois River and down the Mississippi River partway. Then I'll cut over to the Tennessee River and Tom Bigby Waterway, which will take me down to Mobile, Alabama. From there, I'll take the Gulf Coast over to Fort Myers, through Lake Okeechobee, and back to Brunswick. Once you decide to do the loop, you have to start thinking about, in general, where you want to go and when you want to get there. In my case, I decided to try to do the loop in about a year. It's possible to do the loop in less time than that, and it's very common to do the loop over a multi-year period. There were a number of factors that influenced the details of my trip planning. For one thing, it's been a pretty pleasant winter down here in Georgia as far as I'm concerned. If I left Georgia on my loop trip too early in the spring, I was going to run into colder weather further north. Another factor that I had to consider was doctor visits. I had arranged to concentrate all of my annual doctor exams in a 2-week period in the latter part of April. And I figured as long as I was going to be in Norfolk doing these doctor visits, I would also schedule a haul out so I could put some fresh bottom paint on my boat. Another factor I had to be concerned about is the eventual return of winter. The Great Lakes are not a real popular cruising destination in the middle of winter, and for some strange reason, the marinas on the lakes and the gas stocks tend to close up as you get further and further into fall. I made the decision that I wanted to be off the Great Lakes before the end of September. As you flee the approach of winter in the north, there's another potential gotcha waiting for you in the south. The last thing you want to do is hurry down to the nice, warm, sandy shores of the Gulf of Mexico coast just in time to get clobbered by a hurricane. Also, even if you are lucky enough to miss the hurricanes, there are usually insurance repercussions if you take your boat into hurricane country during hurricane season. In my case, I've poured all of these factors into a big pot and stirred it up a little bit and eventually came up with this overall schedule. Well, that's the big plan. Finish up a few more boat projects and then strike out on the Great Loop. I mean, really, you head up the coast to New York City, you start making left turns, and then somehow, a year later, you end up where you started. How tough could it be, right? I guess I'll find out how tough it could be. I hope you're able to follow along. Later.